Ch 1.1. You are listening at FameTV.info. What is this newcomer doing? They've been motionless in the tree for so long that I just voted that the newcomer will live for half a year. Don't let me lose. Yuri really daring to vote on a newcomer to live for half a year. You must know that it's been a long time since a newcomer has lived that long. A series of bullet messages floated through Jihee's vision, but the barrage that floated past didn't affect Jihee as he continued to hide firmly in the tree. Host, what are we doing here? The barrage was shared with Jihee by the system, so it could naturally also see the words. In addition to these messages, the system could also see that the number of real-time viewers had dropped from the original 50,000 to 3,000. This data plunge was steep enough that the system found it a bit difficult to bear. He did not answer the system's words. He looked at the covered passage not far away that led between where they were and the safe zone. According to the information provided by the system, he had been squatting here for more than 3 hours. In the first hour, 2 teams came by, each with about a dozen people. In the second hour, 5 teams came by, each with 7 or 8 people. Jihee's hiding place was high and he could see far away. He even saw that when one team left they bumped into another team coming over, and the two sides interacted a little. In the third hour no team came by, but instead there were a dozen people over the course of the hour interval. Most of them were in groups of 2 or 3 people. If they encountered others, they would stay far away to avoid contact. The system was still talking. Although the voice wasn't able to disrupt Jihee's train of thought, he still felt a bit of a headache because of the sharp mechanical sound. He frowned slightly and explained perfunctorily to the system, of course to avoid these people. The system was puzzled and continued to ask. According to the previous information, as long as the host runs far enough or stays in one location in the protected area, these people will not find the host. It is obviously unnecessary for the host to stay here for so long. Jihee didn't pay any attention to the system. He looked at the time and saw that almost 4 hours had already gone by total, and it had been 20 minutes since the last team had come to check the area. Jihee packed the backpack that he had hidden on the other side of the tree's crown after he had climbed up the tree and prepared to go down. It's just that the moment he moved, a few barrages popped up again. Jihee felt that these things floating in front of him would limit his movements. He paused and asked the system, "Can the barrage be closed?" "Okay, now closing the barrage for the host." As the mechanical voice fell, the bullet chat was indeed rendered invisible. "Tem, what other surprises do you have that I don't know about?" Jihee said with a hint of surprise. When Jihee had woken up previously he had found himself inexplicably bound to this system. After he took a brief moment to understand that he was on a strange survival show, Jihee chose to walk out of the reserve and hide in a tree to observe. He hadn't paid much attention to the system. At first, he thought that the barrage floating in front of him when he woke up was from the strange show, but now it seemed that it was given to him by this system. "I'm very useful. The host is definitely not losing out by being bound to me." The system that had been neglected and ignored all the while was praised by Jihee, and the whole system couldn't help but stand up straight. It saw that the host still needed itself, cheered, and began to explain all of its functions all over again. The more Jihee listened, the more strange his expression became. In the end, he couldn't help interrupting the system. "You said you can provide bullet screen support and maps, those I understand, but the offer to provide tasks and an experience accumulation visualization, these," Jihee thought about it for a while and just felt even more so that the system was really nothing good and that he had gotten a bad draw. He had already thought that this system might be a useless system, but when he really faced the fact that the system was a waste, he was still bitter. The system is still explaining its own functions proudly. "When the host completes tasks, I can also unlock some additional functions for the host." "What functions?" "For example, making things made by the host stronger." Ha! Ha! He was amused at the fact that he had still had hope for this system deep down, and laughed dryly in his heart. "It's okay, after all, compared to those who don't have a system. At least the things I make can be made stronger." After sorting out his mood, he checked the time again. It had been half an hour since the last time someone had come by and no one had come by yet. Apparently he would have to accept that it was looking increasingly improbable that someone would come by any time soon, a fact that made he slightly regretful. However, before he got the chance to act, he saw a very thin man slipping down a tree not far from him. After the man slid down the tree, he didn't rush to the passageway. Instead, he looked around under the cover of the tree trunk and made sure that there was no one around before walking cautiously towards it. Seeing this scene, he was taken aback. When did this person climb the tree, and how could he have not known it at all? However, he didn't spend too much time thinking about it. Since this person had continued walking towards the passage after coming down from the tree, it meant that he wasn't aware of his presence. He quickly slid down the tree. The other party had just observed that there was no one below. He didn't waste any time and moved directly to the passage. He didn't choose to go in. He had already been inside the passageway and knew that the passage outside the safe area was narrow, and could only accommodate one person to pass through. He was of the impression that if he also went in after the thin man it wouldn't work out. He chose to lie in ambush outside the passage, when he heard a faint voice coming from inside. "Come out, we're both newcomers, let's go together." "You don't understand. I'll teach you." Nutrient solution. Through this dialogue, he determined that the person should have come after he. He didn't even know he had come out of the safe zone at all. Seemingly he thought he was sitting in the safe area, and was now trying to call he to come out. "What do you want?" Nutrient solution. He didn't know that was, but he thought he would know soon because he heard footsteps. Pat. Pat, 1 step, 2 steps, the voice was getting closer and closer. As he saw the figure come out of the passage, he raised his stick and knocked the person out cold. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.